Welcome to episode 197 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the Feasts and Celebrations edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew, I'm your host, and I'm with my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, computer genius, a gentleman and a scholar. His name is Joshua Fine. What's going on, man?
I am doing great, Phil, and of course, glad to be back here after Thanksgiving. Thankful to be back on, of course, but one more race in the F1 season that we got to cover and everything, so ready to get into it.
Yeah, we'll go over Fish Lips winning his 900th race in a row, taking 19th win of the year, or 20, because 19th win of the year in Formula One, ending one of the most dominant seasons in the history of Formula One, and providing more fodder for the Orange Army. We'll get into all the other battles, including the battle for second in the Constructors. We'll talk about the postseason test, which of course is going on right now. We'll also we'll review the season, Formula One season, since it's fresh on the minds, and we'll get into some of the other key drivers who stood out and key battles throughout the season. We'll talk about NASCAR's new TV package starting in 2025. That just came out today. We're doing this show on a Wednesday since I was meeting up with one of my good friends since he's in town with his family for Thanksgiving. So we went and hung out on Monday. Thankfully missed Monday Night Football because that was god awful. Speaking of football, we'll talk about our teams and where they're at after week 12 and leading into week 13 for both of them, and also our fantasy teams as well, because we're getting close to the playoffs. 2 weeks to go in the regular season for fantasy football. The roundup will be pretty busy because we're making up for last week when we ran long. So we'll do... Oh, that's nice merch for Blaney. We'll talk about the South Carolina 400, which Dale Earnhardt Jr. drove in. And we'll also talk about the Thanksgiving Classic, which Brendan Queen took down in a battle, the 3-wide battle for many laps with Josh Berry and Caden Honeycutt. We'll go and review those. We'll talk about the MotoGP and Moto2 last two races of their season. Pecco Bagnaia is now a repeat world champion, two-time world champion in MotoGP. And Pedro Acosta won the Moto2 championship. He'll be moving up, and he already has. He's started testing for gas KTM. Rally Japan happened a couple of weeks ago. Supercars was a great battle down to the end there. F2 season finale at Abu Dhabi, and some other news that went on the last couple of weeks, so we'll go over that. And then what we are thankful for this motorsports year, we'll go and talk about that briefly. Josh will let us know all things going on iRacing and gaming in the sim segment, and close the deal. So yeah, let's start with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix for the 19th time in 2023. No real surprise at who won, and it was Fish Lips by nearly 18 seconds over Charles Leclerc, 20.3 seconds over Russell. It was close for the top from second to fifth. Leclerc, Russell, Checo, Perez, and Lando Norris are separated by 6 and 6.2 seconds. Oscar Piastri, Fred Alonso, Yuki Tsunoda trying to get 7th in the constructors for AlphaTauri in their last races. AlphaTauri, Sir Lewis Hamilton, and Lance Stroll rounded out the points-paying finishers. Every car, or 19 of the 20 cars finished. Carlos Sainz, they show him as a DNF. I guess he stopped on the next to last lap and he wasn't classified. But he finished ahead of Valtteri Bottas and Kevin Magnussen, who were a lap down. Logan Sargent ends his rookie year with a 16th place finish. The only driver that hasn't been determined for the 2024 grid is the seat that Logan Sargent had for this season. Likely he will be back, but we still have to wait and see. I mean, honestly, there's nothing really to take from it, Josh, but more of the same. McLaren had better pace in the race. I mean, in terms of, they had good pace all weekend. My fault. I mean, Piastri outqualified Lando Norris. Mercedes struggled a bit. Russell was 4th, but Lewis was 11th. You had Carlos Sainz crashed his car in FP1, and because of that, it basically put his whole weekend into the dumper. Didn't even get out of Q1. And struggled basically the whole entire time to make anything happen. Williams had a rough weekend there, but was able to hold on to 7th. But yeah, I mean, end of a season and end of what was something that, was akin to Schumacher in his heyday, or Senna or Prost or Vettel. Or, those guys. No, I don't even think, I mean, as much as people like to complain on Hamilton because they hate Hamilton because he's black, I don't remember him winning 19 out of 22 races. Or, like, whatever the percentage of that is. But what were your thoughts on the Grand Prix this past weekend at Abu Dhabi?
Yeah, I mean, not a surprise there that Max Verstappen goes out and wins the final race of the season, of course. But I think really the focus this past weekend was who was going to get second in Constructors' Championship, with Ferrari and Mercedes battling it out there. I think that was what the real race was there. Of course, Charles Leclerc finished second and kind of had a chance to somewhat challenge the Red Bull of Verstappen there at the beginning of the race. But, of course, Verstappen's going to win that one out. But I think I would have thought that maybe Lewis Hamilton would have been the one to deliver the second in the standings for Mercedes. But George Russell ended up being that guy this weekend. And Russell is coming the guy here at Mercedes. But, he's had a good result in this race that allowed him to get this second in the points for them. So, Mercedes at the beginning of the year better than what they were last year, but they were still off by quite a bit, and you could see that at times this year. But towards the end of the year, they started to have a better run, and then here in the last race of the season, George Russell is able to get 3rd place here to grab that 2nd place in the podium. So. For them, good result and maybe a little bit of momentum here. We'll talk about it later in or later on with, looking towards next year, but definitely something to build upon with this result in the points. Of course, Sergio Perez, not really the race that he wanted to end out the year on. Of course, I think they're trying to go for Red Bull 1-2, but wasn't able to quite close it out and was still able to beat Lando Norris back to the line on the last lap. But definitely probably wants to finish second in what possibly could be his final race in a Red Bull car. and at least finish second to cap off the year for Red Bull and the amazing success. McLaren, of course, Lando, had a bad race at Las Vegas, goes out here and gets a point to finish in 5th for the last race of the season. So, and Lewis Hamilton kind of surprising in 9th, but he came from 11th, so he breaks into the points there. And Alonso, Tsunoda, Stroll all finished so in the top 10 in the points. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of interesting with the last race of the year. Obviously, we're all kind of glad that Max Verstappen has finished dominating, but caps off a fairly dominant year, and now we kind of look towards next year to see if they'll face any challenges.
That's the hope. I mean, Mercedes started the year with the same concept that they ran last year, basically because it worked at Brazil, and they were wrong. And it took them until Monaco for them to join everybody else on the grid. McLaren was out to lunch at the start of the year, but by the end of the year, they were one of the top teams on the grid, and they likely have arguably the best, the most talented lineup on the grid, and with youth on their side. Aston Martin started the year fast with one of their drivers. We know who that is. And then as the year went on, they fell behind with the development. And the lack of a second driver started to catch up to them there. And Ferrari were the only team that won a race outside of Red Bull, with Carlos Sainz, a smooth operator. Leclerc qualified on pole a lot, but couldn't really do anything with those poles. So there were a lot of teams that were up there at times during the year, but when push came to shove, fish lips would go on and win by 20 seconds, essentially every single week. So that's essentially where we're at with Formula One. I was trying to do the math. Quick math, and then I just needed a calculator. 86.3% of the wins this season. The last 2 years, I think he went from he's won 37 races, I believe, in the last 2 years, or some shit like that, and now he's third alone in all-time wins in Formula One. So you think about that, how insane that is. So he was before this last couple of years, he was around. He wasn't that far off of Fernando Alonso's total, because Fernando Alonso's been at like 32 wins for how many years? I think he was at 34, 35, and then you're talking about 30 or he was at 20 something, I guess, and then over the last 2 years he's won all these races. So it's pretty insane, but you just have to. It's hard. I don't like saying it, but I can't deny the fact that the MFer has won all those races. It's out there. He was given the world championship in 21, but he had won that year. He'd won 10 races, and he had 10 poles and one more podium than Lewis. So in theory, you could make there's justification, minus the fact that Michael Massey manipulated the race. In 2023 or 22, in 2022 he won 15 races, and then he won 19. So 34 wins in the last 3 seasons. And then you look at the all-time wins total, 44 wins, and he's at All-time F1 wins. Yeah, 44 wins. Interesting, since that's Lewis's number. 44 wins, and prior to 2021, he had 10 wins. In the last 3 years, he's won 44 races, and he has now passed Sebastian Vettel on Sunday for third all alone in wins. And now his next target is Michael Schumacher. 37 wins behind Michael Schumacher. And then he's 49 wins behind Lewis Hamilton. So that's something that we'll look at, and we'll see what goes on, how that all works out. I mean, he's passed all the guys who are multiple world champions, except the two guys that have 7 or 7 and 7.5 world championships, and now he's at 3. I'll go into the drivers' point standings. Behind Verstappen, he was nearly 300 points ahead of his teammate Perez. Perez ended up finishing 51 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton for second. Lewis finished third by 28 points over a tie with Alonso and Leclerc, and Lando Norris finished a point behind there. There was a good, in the end, those 4 guys with Carlos Sainz were only separated by 6 points. So interesting how the year started and where Alonso was to where it ended with all those guys so close. George Russell had a good couple of races to end the year, but basically was nowhere in no man's land most of the year. Finished 8th. Was kind of like Valtteri Bottas was for a couple of years in his time at Mercedes. Oscar Piastri ends his rookie season 9th in the standings, and inbred Stroll finished 10th. Over 100, what is it? 106. Yeah, 106. 106 plus, 26. So 132 points behind his teammate in the drivers' championship. So it tells you how bad he was. I mean, only Checo can say that he was worse. The 2 Alpine drivers finished 11th and 12th. Alex Albon, who scored all but 1 point for Williams, finished 13th, and then Sonoda and Bottas were the last 2 double-digit point scorers. Logan Sargent scored 1 point. Nick De Vries was the only driver that did not score a point this season in Formula One. Red Bull won the Constructors' Championship by 451 points over Mercedes. Mercedes was up by 3 points at the end over Ferrari. McLaren beat Aston Martin by 22 points for 4th. Alpine was on their own in 6th, a good 160 points behind Aston Martin. So it shows you basically the massive disparity from the teams here. I mean, you had Mercedes and Ferrari who were in their one zip code. You had Red Bull that was out in a different country. Then you had Mercedes and Ferrari. Then you had McLaren and Aston, the 2 customer Mercedes teams, in their own battle. Alpine was battling themselves the whole year. Williams held on, as I said earlier, 3 points ahead of AlphaTauri for 7th. And Alfa Romeo, Sauber, 9th, and Haas dead last in the Constructors' Championship. So we'll go and get into the the young drivers test here and try to get some news or updates. Now, anything roller coaster season, lifetime data. Now yeah, that's a car. Autos completely new. All right, so that's not what I need. I need motorsport.com. Wolf and Mercedes under huge pressure to deliver in 2024. Well, we'll see about that. What have we gone straight? So highlights unsustainable toll of the season, nor is F1 opportunities. McLaren got Monster Energy sponsorship from the Mercedes team, but they're still keeping their connection with Lewis Hamilton. Pato O'Ward was testing for McLaren during the young driver test and is going to be test and reserve driver for them now in lieu of Alex Palou breaking his contract. Alex Palou is being sued for $23 million for breaking his contract with McLaren. So that don't know where $23 million is coming from, but I'm going to assume Floyd Ganassi, it'll have the name Floyd Chip Ganassi signature on it. We'll see one point. Yeah, so I'll get into that. So the postseason, Russell crashed. Russell, 4 hours in suspected technical failure. Barriers caused significant damage. Second stoppage, water leak, and red flag brought a third time by Yuma Iwasa, who's going to be moving over to Super Formula next year. So you'll see that. Ocon led the test over Pato O'Ward. Frederick Vesti was testing for Mercedes, the Mercedes junior driver. Sergio Perez. All those guys ran over 100 laps. Carlos Sainz was fifth. Alonso 6th. Jack Doohan, the Alpine junior driver and son of 5-time MotoGP world champion Mick Doohan, was 7th. Robert Schwartzman, who knows what his nationality is. He's a Ferrari junior, finished 8th. Logan Sargent was 9th. Charles Leclerc 10th. Teo Pocher, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, was 11th for Alpha Sauber. Felipe Drogovic, the test and reserve driver for Aston Martin, 12th. Tsunoda, Jake Dennis for Red Bull, the Formula E world champion. Iwasa for AlphaTauri, Bierman for Haas, Zach O'Sullivan for Williams, Piastri, Pietro Fittipaldi in his last test for Haas before he moves on to Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan racing in the IndyCar series. Russell Stroll, Franco Colapinto, the F3 world champion for Williams, Ricardo, Zhou, and Alex Albon rounding out the 25 drivers that tested a few days ago in the postseason test. So, Jake Dennis was the one of the 2 drivers, and I think was it not Frederick? I'm trying to remember who the other Red Bull. I'm forgetting off the top of my head who also tested the Red Bull outside of Jake Dennis, but either way, that's what happened there in the postseason test for Formula One. We'll move on now. The news of the day came out because it's NASCAR Banquet weekend because Thursday the 30th will be the awards banquet. They announced a new media rights agreement and deal. It's with combining everything they have going on. So combining the CW deal that they're going to have for Xfinity, which is going to be exclusivity with the Xfinity series. It's going to be $1.1 billion a year. So I'm sure that there's a couple of guys, Dennis Hamlin and Justin Marks, who's another one we're going to talk about. I have to go and put in MotoGP, Moto2, Trackhouse. Good thing I remember that. We got the announcement that Fox Sports and NBC Sports are going to continue essentially where they have been more or less since 2001, but in a lot of ways it harkens back to the past prior to 2001 with how many different channels are going to have some semblance of NASCAR Cup coverage. They're going to, between Fox Sports, NBC Sports, Amazon Prime, and TNT Sports, they'll show all 38 Cup events from 2025 to 2031. And Fox and NBC will have 14 races each. And then, unfortunately, they'll continue to show the Truck Series. NBC will final 14 races, mix of broadcasts, and there's only, so on regular live-to-air TV, 5 Fox races and 4 NBC. Otherwise, it'll be on FS1 or USA. Okay. And then Prime Video and TNT will split 10 races in the summer. Prime Video will stream practice and qualifying live for the first half of the season through the last race of their midseason series, exceptions of the Clash 500 All-Star race. TNT will do the next 5 races, and then they will stream on the Bleacher Report Sports add-on. Practice and qualifying Rangers season will stream on Max and air on True TV. Okay, that's good. So that's another channel. And one thing that we haven't had for the last few years is showing of, they didn't really show as many. I mean, they didn't have practice for a while. Now they have a abbreviated practice session. But going back to when they first started with TV, this TV package back, 20 something years ago, they're going to invest time in showing practice and qualifying all year, whether it's on one of the 2 major platforms, which is either Fox, NBC with their FS1 and USA, or in this case they'll show it. It'll be on Prime or True TV, Bleacher Report Sports, whatever, if you're gonna go and buy that. I guess in the end we know what the package will be. We know that practice and qualifying will be shown. We don't know who's going to be where, but more than likely we know they're not really going to make any changes. I think the next real change that's going to come to the television coverage is who's going to replace Mike Joy. But I think NBC is going to stay the way it is for the foreseeable future, but they'll just have less races. Curious to see if there's going to be a separation with those 10 races, or if they're just going to basically kind of farm out the crews. Like Fox is just going to farm out their group to do the 5 races on Prime, and then NBC is going to do the TNT bundle, or if there will be separate people there, because I know that they're going to have to hire separate people theoretically for the CW for the Xfinity package. We knew about that many months ago, and it was a huge announcement because now the Xfinity series truly has an identity. I mean, they've gotten an identity more because the racing has been better, the car has been better over the last few years in general, and so they had that identity, but now they have a TV package that basically separates it from being Cup Light, in that because they got rid of the Cup drivers being in every race, but now they have the TV package to go with it. But I mean, it reminds me of, one race would be on one week, you'd have it on ESPN, weekend you'd have it on TNN, the next weekend you'd have it on CBS, like that's the way, or TBS, like that. Those were the days that I came from when I first started watching Cup. They had races on a race or two on ABC. They had a handful of races on CBS. A lot of them were on ESPN or TNN, few on TBS, and that was what we had. IndyCars or CART was on ESPN and ABC. Basically, motorsports, if you were looking for motorsports, you're basically watching it on ESPN or TNN. That was really what it was forever. And then 2001 Fox decided to put their hat in the ring. So now we know, at least for the next, we know until 2031 what our TV package is going to be. We know what we're going to have to purchase, so to speak. Going to have to, if you don't want to, you want to cut the cord, you're going to have to get something that has FS1. You're going to have to get something that has Amazon. You'll have to get Amazon Prime, which I already have because of, I've had it for a long time, and a lot of us do because we buy shit off Amazon. In terms of, I also now, because of the NFL, have YouTube TV, so I basically have most of that stuff covered, minus the Bleacher Report thing.
You have TNT anyways, because that's a simulcast.
Yeah, and I think I have True TV. So if that's the case, then I'm covered. I'm sure you got the same. So what were your thoughts when you heard the announcement and the details of the announcement in general for this package? I mean, we talked about it briefly. I thought about it being more prior to the 2001 TV deal, but you had a good point in what you thought about the coverage, or what the coverage lays out like.
I mean, I think, first of all, I think what stands out is that Amazon Prime is joining the fold, and now we're going to have 5 races that are exclusively on streaming only. And I think when you look at the numbers, 1.1 billion for this deal as a whole, and I think that's including the CW package and the Xfinity series, but I think a good 40% of that is probably from Amazon. Or they said that it's a 40% increase from the previous deal of how much they're getting. So I mean, that's a good chunk of that is probably from Amazon. They paying a lot for Thursday Night Football with the NFL, so I'd imagine that they're probably, I mean, they're not paying similar numbers, but they're proportionally probably paying a good amount for those 5 races. I don't have the full details in front of me, but I think it's significant because it shows a shift in people's tastes and I guess what they think people's tastes are, and there's good and negative ways to look at this. I think from the TV standpoint, like we said earlier, like I said, it feels like the 2007 package where Fox had the first 12 or 13 races. I think they always ended at like Dover or something like that. And then the first Pocono race or whatever was always the first NASCAR and TNT broadcast, and then it ended at Chicagoland or Kentucky in later years. So from that perspective, it feels like that because it's about, the same. They always had that 6 race package in between the ESPN and Fox terms during that season, so, or that period of NASCAR on television. So that's what it feels like, except now we're adding a 4th partner in Amazon. So that's kind of what it feels like to me, except now, now we're including streaming with 5 races being on Prime. And obviously if you're a streamer, I'm been a streamer for quite a while now with YouTube TV. I've had Prime for several years, so we're good, we're covered. I think we'll all get the channels. If you have Peacock as well, if you pay for that, then you'll get those whatever's on Peacock. So that's good. If you're on that, of course. If you're not, if you're either a super saver, you're really poor or whatever, or you just don't want to go buy Amazon, whatever the reason is, obviously you're kind of screwed in this, and then you'll have to figure out a way to go on a figure out your own means to be able to watch the races. So you're kind of screwed on that, and if you have to go buy the packages to be able just to watch NASCAR, then I guess you're a little bit screwed on that. So from that, it more or less benefits the people who've already changed to streaming packages and stuff like that. Although at the end of the day, you're almost paying with how much you're buying for streams and stuff, whether you're on all the Netflix, HBO Max, which is going to be part of this, Hulu, which if you have Hulu, then that covers this, YouTube TV. Once you add all that back up, it's almost like you're paying for a cable package anyway. So I don't, at the end of the day, I don't know how much people are actually saving. But when you consider all of that, NASCAR is signaling a move to the future with going to Amazon Prime and having simulcasts on HBO Max, Peacock, etc. So that's maybe you look towards the future. Of course, Amazon has the money, so that's helping that. That's going to be a different exposure. Also, they did say that Bleacher Report is going to be a part of this because they're under Turner Sports now, or all that stuff with Warner Brothers Discovery. So they're part of it. House of Highlights, which has 24 million followers, I think, across the internet. So they're going to be promoting NASCAR regularly. So got to consider that as well. So, and a lot of it's young people, people my age, younger, in college, high school age. So a lot of kids going to be exposed to NASCAR. So if they can package it well, make it interesting, similar to how Drive to Survive has made F1 interesting here in America. Although I don't know how interesting it actually is, but obviously the numbers show that there's interest, and the marketing reflects that. Maybe NASCAR can try to build up a new fan base and try to grow the sport in that direction with some of these different platforms helping cover and promote the sport, etc. So that's the positive of it, I think, from when you look at it like that. And obviously the revenue for NASCAR, I mean, it's all paid out for. If you're worried about the ratings and whatnot, I mean, they're shelling out. These TV companies, I don't know how they have these money, but they're shelling out a lot of money, and obviously Amazon, everybody is using Amazon, so obviously they have a lot of money. So I mean, it's interesting to see all that kind of play out. And then I think the real negatives, I think, is that there's only 9 races on broadcast television. Almost only a quarter of the schedule is going to be on broadcast television. I think it is pretty sad. So I would like to think that it should be like at least half, if not more, and that the rest of it should be on cable. But obviously we're streaming, but obviously that's beginning to change, and you're going to see like a handful of races that have history and meaning behind it, and the rest of the schedule is going to be on streaming or cable. So kind of a shift. Not sure if you're a traditional fan, if you like that part of it. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this all kind of plays out. The broadcast crews, we'll see who they pick for Amazon Prime, or if it's going to kind of double over from people who are on other broadcast channels. Kind of see that. I mean, obviously they do have an exclusive broadcast crew, but if you kind of look at it from who's broadcasting, obviously they're borrowing from kind of the NBC crew and ESPN personnel. Obviously, I think Kirk Herbstreit is obviously on ESPN. I mean, Al Michaels is on his own deal, but Kirk Herbstreit is on ESPN. I think Kaylee Hartung is also on ESPN as well, or ABC. And I think some of the other analysts and stuff, I think they are exclusive to Amazon now, but from Thursday Night Football with the NFL. So that's interesting. But I have a feeling they still use NBC's some of NBC's cameramen and crew for that Thursday Night Football package. So we'll see how that turns out, and who they pick for that, and then who they decide to go for Turner Sports for TNT. So welcome back for NASCAR on TNT, I guess, coming back to the fold after being away for 10 years or so. So I guess looking forward to seeing that again. But and obviously it's kind of interesting they get back with Turner Sports, about some obviously the recent passing of Ken Squire, who was on TNN and TBS, NASCAR on CBS. So kind of continuation from that legacy. So we'll see who covers that. And then obviously Robot Rick Allen and Dale Jr. and NBC and everything. So I have a feeling NBC, the last 3 races always been on broadcast NBC. So I think they said there's only 4 races that are going to be on broadcast NBC. So that leads whatever race is going to be on broadcast NBC. I would have to pick. It'd have to be one of the few remaining marquee races that are before the playoffs. So that means that most of the playoffs is going to be on USA. So which I think is not good, because those are the ones that should be on at broadcast TV, because those are the ones that are supposed to get people interested in the championship race and everything. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I mean, obviously it's a lot of money, and we'll see how much of this deal actually goes to teams and helps them in their finances. Obviously, that was a big point of contention over the last year or so, is how much the teams would be getting in the new contract to try to give the teams more money. Obviously, they've been operating at a loss for several years, so we'll see how that helps them in their quest to try to gain viability from a financial perspective, for sure.
And I think that's the next, now that they have this TV package sorted, what is going to happen with the charters, what's going to happen with revenue sharing with the RTA is now the next key discussion or decision or battle, so to speak. Steve Phelps doesn't believe they need to add horsepower, so it tells you how out of touch and stupid he is. Him and SOD, but the drivers tell you what they need, but then they don't listen to the drivers, and that's been the case for years. And you look at who has retired over the past few years, and it kind of makes sense. All these guys were veteran presence in the series, from Jeffy to Smoke to Junebug, Kenseth, and Jimmy, and then now Kevin Harvick, and all those guys are gone. The longest tenured guy on the circuit is Kyle Busch. So I mean, he has a voice, but it's usually with him bitching. He does get it in the sense of being an owner for a long time, until a few weeks ago. So we'll see what happens with this charters and the revenue sharing, though. And I also am interested to see, like what you were saying, where who will be shared and who will be moved around in terms of the TV package, and if it'll be sharing announcers and whatnot. Something we will be finding out here in the next few months, because obviously we're just over a year away, so a lot of key people to be hired, and not depth and quality control wise, there really isn't that many people out there. I mean, you can look at Alan Bestwick and Matt Yoakum. Those two guys are out there. Bob Dillner is another one. And then you have to go and look at the MRN men and women. I think Georgia Henneberry is probably going to get a call. I mean, she was working with the Indy cars and Indy Next. She might go and get called by NASCAR or what's it called? Why am I forgetting her name? She's married to Dylan Welsh. Hannah Newhouse. Hannah Newhouse might end up getting on TV because Kimmy Kuhn was more or less spending most of the season with NBC and then dovetailing the rest of it with MRN, which is where she came from. So thinking some of those ladies and then maybe some of the veteran guys like Bagley might get a shot in the booth with some of these packages. We'll see what happens with that. Hopefully, with Fox getting the Truck Series, continuing with the Truck Series, they'll decide or figure out a plan that will involve them actually going to the races and having announcers who have a clue, since they really haven't tried that for the last few years. And it's made a Truck Series into a clown show. But, it's one thing at a time. Okay, so let us move forward. We got into the TV package, so now we'll get into the season review. I mentioned 34 race wins for Fish Lips. He also set a whole ton of records over these past 2 years. I don't have to, if you listen to the show long enough, you know how I feel about the guy and the team that he drives for. He is a talented race car driver, and now that he has the best car by far, he's destroying everybody, not just his teammate, but the whole entire grid. It's become less competitive than even when Lewis was winning. And people complained that Lewis was winning, but I mean, the more you look at it, the more you think about it, it's probably because he's black. But when the Great White Hope, as Derek Warwick called him, wins, it's fine, and you have all these people justifying it, and it's like, fine, he's winning, good. But in the grand scheme of things, there's plenty of people who question the validity, especially of his first title, even though he won more races than Lewis and won more poles in 21. People question the validity of that championship and are still going to hate the guy, largely because he drives like a douche when he's around anybody. But that actually makes him, work hard. But what do you say, Josh, on Verstappen and the records he has set for points and wins and poles and top fives and podiums and all that crap over the past 3 years? Really, I mean, it's not even the last two. It's really the last 3 years, because he came into 2021 with 10 Grand Prix wins. And now he's a 3-time world champion with 54 Grand Prix wins.
I mean, it's just a different era again, like Ferrari with Michael Schumacher and, with Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, and having, one team dominate through different periods. And obviously Red Bull, they've found something in the last 3 years that's made them really good and have a lot of speed. And obviously Max is their number one driver, so they're going to put a lot of their effort into making sure he's successful. So, I think their goal has been to be the best team, and they've, clearly, achieved that objective the the last 3 years, and obviously they came down to the wire with Lewis Hamilton in 2021. But ever since they put out these new regulations with the new F1 car, and the last 2 years they've been the best team, and he's been the best driver. So we've seen what he can do as talent before, but obviously now that the team is producing good cars, obviously he's able to dominate pretty thoroughly throughout the year. So it's not surprising considering what they're trying to achieve, but it's just another sign of a dominant team. So I'm not really too mad at it, to be honest. It's just another era, but I think it's more of being able to see throughout the field who else can be able to compete with them, and seeing how other teams are able to potentially win. So that's more of what we want to see. And obviously, with Lewis and Michael Schumacher, I feel like in general in sports that the dominant teams tend to get hated on after a while. People started to hate on Jimmy Johnson for winning too much in NASCAR. People hated the New England Patriots because they won too much and were in the playoffs every year. So I kind of feel like from that perspective, that's why dominant drivers tend to get hated on after a while. And I feel like that's the same thing for it's going to be the same thing for Max here. If he continues to dominate for say the next 2 years, I think by the 5th year of Max Verstappen winning a title, I think everybody's just gonna get tired of it and start to hate on him for winning too much. So it's probably a little fresh. I think 21 was an exciting title, whether you were on Lewis's side or Max's side, it was an exciting battle to watch. And then obviously last year, new car and everything, and he was kind of the best team. And then this year they went out and proved that they know the new car better than anybody else. So now I think next year after, if he continues to win, I think people, especially after they've had more room for improvement, for the other teams, if he continues to dominate, people will just probably start to hate on him more. So I think we'll see how that goes. But it's just more of a sign of the times than Max Verstappen suddenly turning on another level in his talent pool. So that's what it is. And and I think until somebody comes up and challenges Red Bull as a whole, I think we're going to continue to see more of the same.
And that leads into, we talk about that because they basically stopped development of their car, God knows when. We look at Mercedes, they started the season with the zero pod concept and it was wrong. And they didn't listen to their drivers, they didn't make the changes they needed. And then they basically had to react. And by Monaco, they had changed the car. The peak was George having a couple of decent runs here and there in qualifying, Lewis qualifying on pole at Hungary, and then absolutely shitting the bed on the start. Lewis being running second at Coda and then getting DQ'd on a technicality. George having the two of the last three races kind of being up there. I talked about Aston Martin with Fernando Alonso and being the solo driver there. Ferrari having one of the most balanced lineups on the whole entire grid, but the smooth operator getting the pole and the win at Singapore, the one non-Red Bull driver to win all year, Leclerc qualifying on a bunch of poles, and then McLaren coming through, starting at Silverstone when they brought their upgrade package, Lando Norris, I think for the first time really showing consistent productivity on a race-to-race basis when the car was there. And then Oscar Piastri, who's considered one of the best talents that has come into Formula One, and some of the results, winning a sprint race at Qatar, His rookie season, the closest thing I can compare that to is Lewis's 2007 season, but then Lewis, of course, won multiple Grand Prix and was in the mix for the World Championship, so it's a very high bar to meet. But Oscar Piastri is probably the closest we've gotten to that in a long time. The question would be, I mean, I don't know how you'd want to look at it if you're going to do team by team, or if there's specifics, if there's like something specific that these teams all should do or need to do. Those were the 4 teams that were the closest to Red Bull, if we can even say they were close. What has to happen from these organizations to at least make it watchable, reasonable? Because those 4 teams at the end of the day, from race to race, they were all up there and contending behind him. So there was actually racing. Once you got away from his ass, there was actually competition. So now, if they were to compete and actually make fish lips work, there might be something compelling on TV. So it's something that Formula One is worried about, and I'm sure that they're not going to do BOP and they're not going to do any of that stuff. They're going to let them continue to dominate. But I think there's things that have to happen for those other teams to compete on a regular basis.
I mean, I think, for the 4 teams, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin, I think if you look at it from a general perspective, I think Mercedes, other than challenging Red Bull, I think what they need to do to be able to challenge Red Bull is, I think, they've got to get Lewis Hamilton back in the win column. I think that's probably, priority number 1 for them, is to get their, number 1 driver back in the win column. And I think, they've got to get George Russell to be more consistent and also get him back in the win column after not winning this year. And last year he had a win. So to get him, more consistent in that area as well. So I think if they're, better at that, and I think they also have to be able to execute their strategy better. We've seen where races this year where they had opportunities to potentially win. Like, for example, the United States Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton got very close to being able to pass Max Verstappen there at the end, but their strategy, they kind of had a mistake on some of their strategy, and it kind of led to them having an opportunity. But if they would have pitted earlier or gotten on different set of tires, then maybe they would have had a chance to pass Max Verstappen there at the end. And obviously they weren't able to do that, and Lewis Hamilton had to settle for 2nd place at the USGPs. So, of course, then they got penalized. So they have to be able to eliminate the mistakes that they've tended to make over the last couple of years, now that they don't have the advantage in the car that they've had over the past decade. So now they've got to improve on that end. Ferrari, I think it's kind of more of the same, although I think their errors that they've made are more comical in nature, compared to what other teams have done. And it's kind of become a meme that Ferrari has made colossal mistakes, and obviously they made a change in principle this year, but they still had some of the same issues. And they improved in pace over the year, and they got more competitive towards the end of the year. So I think you'd like to see a continuation of that. And then I think Carlos and Charles Leclerc, I think they both got to be better throughout the whole season. Obviously, Carlos Sainz was able to get into the win column, but at Singapore. But other than that, they didn't have any wins. So they have to challenge. I'll start with Aston Martin, and obviously they were the closest at the beginning of the year, particularly Alonso, to Red Bull. But over the course of the year, they fell off pretty hard, and by the end of the year, after the summer break, they had a really bad stretch. They kind of picked it back up towards the last couple of races at the end of the year, but they had a really bad stretch where they weren't finishing well and had DNFs. So I think they've got to be able to start off the year hot like they did this year and continue throughout the whole season and not have that fall off that they did in the middle portion of that. And for McLaren, obviously, I think is a little bit different. They weren't very good at the beginning of the year, but over the course of the year, as they got upgrades and more time to get their car right, they were more competitive, and we saw that in their results, and they began to get more podiums and everything. So I think they just need to continue working in that direction, and I think they'll be more competitive. And maybe for Lando Norris, I think he's got to improve as a driver. Obviously, he's their number one driver there, so he's got to make less mistakes throughout races. And I think he's definitely had some good opportunities for at least a podium finish that I think he probably threw away over the course of the year. So he's got to improve in that department as well. So I think McLaren's kind of an interesting one because compared to the others, I feel like they're starting from an upward trajectory going into next season, where I think is the other teams they did finish kind of on the upwards, but they did have a trend or a point where they were downtrending. So I think for the other teams, they've got to continue to push back into the upper echelon that they were in, whereas McLaren, they were bad for several years, and now they're finally starting to be good again. So I think they might make it a little bit more interesting next year, but we'll have to see.
That's all good points there. Ferrari is Ferrari. We will continue to say that. They'll always figure out a way to be totally farcical with their decision making and whatever, always having the cartoon anvil land on their head. Aston Martin, how long is Fernando Alonso going to put up with the ineptitude and some of the issues that they have, and the fact that his teammate's a hack? Mercedes, are they serious? Are they trying to compete? Are you going to waste the talent of one of the greatest drivers of all time, and in Lewis, and then in thinking about what George Russell was considered prior to getting up to Formula One, he was one of the best young talents coming into the series. Are they going to give him something to work with? And McLaren, I do agree, is probably the most ready to start off the year in a more competitive stead to actually fight with the fish lips and Checo to see what can happen. I think Oscar Piastri, after this rookie year, he's going to be much stronger. Lando, finding the consistency, if he does that, they're going to be a tough out in 2024. There are definitely more. I think there's more questions on the Mercedes and Ferrari side than on the McLaren side. In terms of, so surprises and disappointments. I mentioned Piastri and how good he was in the second half of the year and how he did things that most rookies don't do. Definite surprise there. I think can look at Alex Albon and how he performed with the Williams. I think those are two guys that definitely stood out to me during this season. And disappointment-wise, I would say that Logan, on the flip side, Logan Sargent, yes, he's raw, yes, he has talent, but he only scored the 1 point, and that was after disqualifications happened. He was going to go the whole entire year without scoring a point, and he only had 2 Q3 appearances the whole entire year. Haas, I mean, I don't know what their purpose is in Formula One. You had Hulkenberg qualifying in Q3 a good amount, but then dropping like an anchor in every race because the car was terrible on tires. The customer Ferrari teams were not good in general. Alpine had the worst reliability of anybody. You talked about it just a minute ago about Ferrari's bad strategy and bad decision making. This has continued. It doesn't matter who their team principal is. It's like, when are you going to finally make logical changes? When are you going to go and make the changes necessary so that your team is run properly? Other than that, I mean, surprises, I mean, we can make a case for Aston and Fernando Alonso after taking over for Sebastian Vettel, that they had such a good car at the start of the year, and that they were literally the only team that was looking like they could battle with fish lips, and they had a chance at a couple of those Grand Prix to possibly win. I think that was a surprise. And then seeing that his teammate is completely useless and clueless in the same car, I mean, you see the absolute, like, the crater, the difference between the two drivers. And that I think was the case in a couple of 2 or 3 of these teams. And that is bad when you're trying to compete in constructors, for sure. But what say you, Josh?
I mean, I think one of the surprises, I mean, that you hadn't mentioned yet is, for me personally, I think one thing I was surprised is that Daniel Ricciardo was able to get a drive in the AlphaTauri. Obviously, a bit abbreviated because he was injured for quite a bit with a hand injury, but I was surprised that he actually got back into an F1 drive. Of course, after last year, losing his ride at McLaren, I really thought his F1 career was probably over, and that if he wanted to become a driver full time elsewhere, he would have to make a change and do a different series or anything. Despite being a test driver, I just didn't think that the opportunity would present itself this year, and it seemed like he wanted to go into a car that was competitive and not just settle. And so from that perspective, yeah, it was definitely surprising to see him back. His results were kind of lackluster throughout, his time, but he did get a good qualifying effort in Mexico City and turned in a 7th place finish. So that was surprising considering the speed of the AlphaTauri cars, and he definitely showed some considerable pace during his races there, even though some of the finishes don't reflect that. So I did think that was surprising in itself. So that was, definitely a nice surprise there, especially for somebody that's one of the more popular drivers in this series and, the sports. So, that's one thing there. I mean, like you, I was kind of surprised at the beginning of the year with Alonso, Aston Martin, their performances that they put on. Through Monaco, they were one of the better teams in this series, but after that they kind of fell off and they didn't have the pace. So both surprising and kind of disappointing. I think it's surprising that Lewis Hamilton didn't win a race this year. I mean, you could extend that to George Russell not being able to win after what he did last year, but I think Lewis Hamilton obviously looking to get back in the win column, and it obviously Verstappen, not surprised by his dominance, but the few races that he had an opportunity to not win and for somebody else to win, surprised that Lewis wasn't one of those drivers, but obviously there wasn't very much room at the winners table this year. So obviously that I think I agree with Haas being completely disappointing. I think from a non F1 perspective, I think what was surprising is seeing Andretti make a entry and get as far as they've gotten. I think that's surprising. But on the flip side, I think it's also disappointing the lack of respect that he's getting from the rest of the F1 teams that are currently existing. Obviously, they're making it very hard for Andretti to come into F1. And also, I think what is surprising about that is that they've gotten General Motors to partner with them in Cadillac. So I think that's maybe a off-track F1 headline to, I guess, put it like that. That I think both surprising and disappointing. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out, and if who they get as a driver and all that, and if they're able to finally get on the grid. But it does show kind of the country club, I guess you could say, that F1 teams and principals kind of tend to be with allowing new teams to come here and compete in this sport.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we're gonna have to follow as we go on. I mean, basically I would say that 2025 is out more than likely, even though there are pieces in place that Andretti has a car ready, a test mule ready to take out on the track. I'm going to mention the GM and Cadillac this later in the roundup, but I think that is a key, because with this whole American presence thing, if they're really serious about it, running 3 races in the United States, 5 in the Americas, counting the Canadian and Mexican Grand Prix, and then you also, 6 if you think about it, because of Brazil, they're looking, Argentina, of course, is in IndyCar they're looking at, but you have to go and have representation. And if you're going to question the validity of an Andretti, who you had no problem bringing in lesser teams over the years, and Haas is a joke of a team. I respect the people that work, generally the people that are on the road working on the team. I think their drivers are solid drivers, but they don't have a direction. They're known because of Gunther Steiner cursing. That's literally the only reason we know about Haas F1. That's it. What the hell are you doing? I don't know what Sauber's doing out there outside of being a placeholder for Audi in a couple of years. Can make the case for Alpine too, but now they're like the Miami Dolphins of Formula One, in that they have all kinds of celebrities signing up to be a part of the ownership team. Like, that's really what they are. They have the worst power unit by far, and the reliability, and a driver combination that don't really like each other, which is interesting. So something to look at there. So we'll see what happens moving into 2024, and some of these key news items, and how that all comes off after this off season, next few months of the off season. NFL Week 12, we had the Niners, of course, played on Thanksgiving and kicked the shit out of the Seahawks to give themselves an upper hand in the NFC West. You can name the offensive player on the 49ers skill position. They all were able to score touchdowns. Brandon Ayuk had the game-winning touchdown, essentially, after a relatively quiet night. Debo was dominant. Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle. The offensive line was meh, of course, but Brock Purdy responded. The defense was an absolute terror on Geno Smith. He wasn't 100%. His arm was definitely not 100%. And he was just he was like T in batting practice the whole entire night there. Whether it was Bosa, Young, Armstead, Javon Hargrave, all those guys on the defensive line. Tackling was better last Thursday night, and Mooney Ward had one of the best games of his career, basically eliminating DK Metcalf in that game. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba had the most yards out of anybody on the Seahawks last week. So that tells you the kind of defense the secondary put up there. First game without Talanoa Hufanga, and they stood up pretty good there. Then now they've had the extra time off. They're preparing to go to Philly, a battle for the number 1 seed. If they lose the game, Philly's more or less going to have the number 1 seed. If they win that game, there's a possibility or chance that it could go around, it could turn around, and they could get the number 1 seed like they had in 2019, and benefited them on their way to the Super Bowl in Miami to play Kermit the Frog and the Kansas City Chiefs. Otherwise, they've been on the road these last few years in some of these big matchups, especially in the NFC Championship game against the Rams a couple of years back, and then last January when they had to go to Philly in the NFC Championship game, and neither of those went the way of the 49ers. But, I mean, putting the cart before the horse, we still got a few weeks left in the season, good 5-6 weeks left in the season. If they can beat Philly, it would be huge, though. And in terms of the fan bases and listening to Philly fans talking trash, it'd be nice to shut them up, for sure. Josh, you had a big, what is probably going to be the rivalry of that NFC South for the foreseeable future. Two great young quarterbacks, your guy, Trevor Lawrence, and Houston CJ Stroud. Quite a game last Sunday, post-Thanksgiving, and Jacksonville's the hot streaker progression after a slow start, and in a blip on the screen with the 49ers, they have responded quite well, and I think have essentially, by beating Houston, guaranteed that they're comfortable as a division champion, even with a few weeks to go in the season. It's more a case of chasing the likes of Kansas City and Baltimore to possibly get that number 1 seed.
Yeah, it's a big game that they won on Sunday for Jacksonville. Going into this one, I was really worried because Houston, obviously, they beat them pretty badly in week 3, and they also are schematically similar to the 49ers, with DeMeco Ryans being the former defensive coordinator at San Francisco and now being the Texans head coach. And CJ Stroud has been, the rookie sensation this year. And people are saying, "Oh, CJ Stroud's outplaying Trevor Lawrence and everything." And I've said it before, like, who cares about him until we actually play them? And this game, the Jaguars, they were able to contain CJ Stroud, throughout the game, throughout the first half. And then, Jacksonville was able to put up points, and they were able to score on drives. But the second half, I was starting to look for the Texans to come back and kind of challenge Jacksonville, and they kind of did a little bit, but Jacksonville was able to respond and stop the Texans from getting closer to them. I think the end of the first half, Jacksonville was able to get to the 1 yard line somehow with deep pass deep over to Christian Kirk, and he was able to take it to the 1 yard line, and then they did outside toss to Travis Etienne, which I don't know if I would have agreed with that call there, but that's what they went with, and he got stuffed at the goal line, so didn't happen, and that kind of allows the other team to go back into it in the third quarter, and Jacksonville started off good in the third quarter, got intercepted on what should have been holding or pass interference there, and then the Texans were able to get a touchdown from that, but Jacksonville responds, got a touchdown in the third quarter to Calvin Ridley, and obviously Calvin Ridley had a good game. It seems like him and Trevor Lawrence are starting to get on the better page, and they're starting to use him more creatively, so I like that. And then in the fourth quarter, the Jacksonville defense stepped up, 2 sacks on CJ Stroud in the final drive. Josh Allen becomes the second player in sacks in Jacksonville history, and I think it's pretty clear that they're going to have to pay him here in the next offseason. They're going to have to give him a big contract to retain him, so look out for that. But it was a pretty big game from the divisional perspective, and division, obviously if Jacksonville loses, then they're on the outside looking in for the divisional lead, but Jacksonville wins the game. They retain first place, and for a brief moment between games, they were the number 1 seed in the AFC, which is, I haven't seen that since 1999, and I was way before I was even a fan of football, so that was pretty cool to see, so I had to take a picture of that on my phone real quick. So that does lead up into the next couple of weeks, where a few weeks ago it was looking like it was going to be a tough gauntlet of games, but now that Joe Burrow is out on Monday Night Football, the Jaguars are, I think, they opened as 7.5 on Monday, so favorites there for Monday Night Football versus the Bengals. And then they face the Browns in Cleveland. Tough defense, but Deshaun Watson is out for the season, and both their PJ Walker and Dorian Thompson-Robinson aren't really big threats that they need to worry about on defense that would potentially beat them, and that leads up into the matchup with the Ravens with Lamar Jackson on Sunday Night Football in 2 weeks. So that's going to be a big game, and if Jacksonville wins, that could be the tiebreaker for the number 1 seed in the NFL. Should Kansas City falter in any more of their games throughout the year, the rest of the year, and if Jacksonville wins out, basically Jacksonville's gonna have to win out to get the number 1 seed, I think, in the AFC. So that'd be pretty exciting if they do that. Which outside of that Ravens game, after that they play the Bucks in Tampa the day before Christmas, and then they play in Jacksonville against the Carolina Panthers, who just fired their head coach, and then they play in Tennessee, who they obviously are probably going to be eliminated by then as well. So definitely a kind of an easy schedule, actually, kind of looking like it's turning out to be. So we'll see how it turns out, but it's definitely looking like there's a possibility that Jacksonville could be a team that gets hot down the stretch here and possibly end up being the number 1 seed in the AFC, which would be pretty exciting for me. So we'll see how that goes. Fantasy, I got to win out somehow, or at least hope that either Joe or Wilson lose and I'm able to outscore them somehow in points this next 2 weeks. So that's the objective there. We'll see if it happens. And if I can, get lucky enough to be the 6th seed here in the fantasy playoffs, so that'd be pretty interesting, I guess. But it should be an interesting stretch here as we get into December now, where we find out who's real in the NFL, and find out who the playoffs teams are going to be.
Yeah, and I forgot to. That's a good point. You're talking about fantasy is very close in our league. Luke is ran off with the regular season. Vic has won most of most weeks, but he's oh well, that's news. And so he's already made money, new dad, so using that for diapers or whatever. But we still have a couple weeks to go. I'm just ahead of Josh and Wilson and Joe at 6-6 and fifth. I'm 9 points behind Jeff, so I could move up another place there. 1 game behind Steve and 2 games behind Vic. Both Luke and Vic have locked up a playoff spot. They're still from third on through eighth are only separated by 2 games. So with 2 weeks to go in the regular season, I mean, I think Manny and Matt are essentially done. So we'll see what happens with that. A lot of movement today on the free agent wire, but or the waiver wire. So we'll see what happens. This week I'm playing Manny in the league. Josh, you're playing Matt. Luke is playing Wilson. Jeff is playing Vic. And Steve is playing Joe. So we'll see what happens there. In one of my other leagues, I'm 10-2. I just lost my second game of the season last week. So that was unfortunate. I was going against a team who had Dak Prescott. I mean, I have Josh Allen, and he had a great week, but Dak Prescott went off. He got productivity out of the vast majority of his roster. Outscored my. I only lost by 3.5 points, and we could look at the contributions of his wide receivers. I had 16.7. He had 29.3. His tight end TJ Hawkinson was 9.5 points better than Jake Ferguson. So those were where the difference was. So unfortunately, lost that for the second time this season. I was 3-0 and I lost, and then I'd won 7 in a row prior to the loss to this team who I killed earlier in the year. I'm playing a team that I beat by less than a point in week 2 here. I've locked up a playoff spot in the league. There's still plenty of movement to go. 2 games separating 2nd through 7th, and 3 from 2nd to 8th, but the 8th place team is only 2 games behind 4th. So there's movement to be had or seen or whatever within the playoff mix there. I'm 5th in my league. I'm 5th in one of my other redraft leagues. In the Dynasty League, we've went on a run. We made some moves to solidify our position for the draft next April. But we've went on a run after what was a horrible start to the year. So we'll see if anything comes of it, if we actually make the playoffs. and are able to make something work through that. All right. So let us move forward into the GSP roundup. The South Carolina 400. We had at Florence Motor Speedway. Took place on a little over a week and a half ago for the late models there, the Charlie Powell Memorial, and I'm trying to see the results. I can't find.
Cade Brown won that one. Pretty interesting. Josh Berry led a ton of that race. And then I think somewhere halfway, I think he had a pit stop or something at the halfway point and fell off after that. Junior started like 25th, I think, and then came up to finish in, I think, 8th place. He got up to like 5th or 6th there, so that was pretty good. And Carson Quapple was up there in the lead for a bit too, and then he got kind of knocked out of the way by Cade Brown and Caden Honeycutt. So that was a pretty good race. I don't really follow the late models like I probably should, but Junior was in it, so wanted to watch, and that's why I wanted to put it on here on part of the roundup. So there was a pretty interesting race throughout, and seeing kind of the back and forth and stuff, and some of the shenanigans that go on in late models and stuff. That was pretty fun to watch. So kind of makes that Flow Racing, if you have that subscription, definitely makes it worth it. And especially next year Cars Tour, they're expanding and getting more attention. So definitely go get that sub if you want to watch more late model stuff with this and Cars Tour and everything else.
Yeah, and they announced a new sponsor for the Cars Tour, presenting sponsor for the Cars Tour a few days ago with Harv and the whole group. ZMAX, who also sponsors the Charlotte drag strip. We'll go through the results. Cade Brown over Caden Honeycutt, Carson Quapple, Josh Berry, driving for Kevin Harvick Incorporated, Brendan Queen, Landon Huffman, Jacob Hefner, Junebug, Connor Zilch, or whatever, Carter Langley were the top 10. Nasty Stephen Nassie was 11th. Laney Bice, think the child of Jeff Bice, former crew chief in the Cup Series, Ronnie Bassett Jr., who's run Xfinity races on and off. Katie Hettinger was 18th. Doug Barnes Jr., 23rd. Landon S. Huffman was in 28H. Landon Huffman, the son of Robert Huffman, in the what is Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s vodka? The High Rock vodka car. Yeah, thank you. Josh Williams, the new driver. That was an announcement that took place that Josh Williams will be taking over the number 11 in the Xfinity series for Colleague Racing, and he ended up racing with the Colleague guys at this race. William Sawalich was 31st. And he had Brandon Pierce second. And those, that's a great name. Boo Boo Dalton. Great name. Go and move forward into the Thanksgiving Classic. Thanksgiving Classic late model stocks. Yeah, so Brendan Queen battled Josh Berry and Caden Honeycutt for the victory, and Queen was able to hold out for the win in the 0-3 by 0.444 of a second. Honeycutt started on pole, finished second. Josh Berry was on the outside pole and finished third, 1.635 seconds off there. Jonathan Finley, Jared Fryer, your top 5. Doug Barnes Jr., Chase Burrow, Clay Jones, Brady McCaskill, and Cody Bryant rounded out your top 10. Ronnie Bassett Jr. was 13th. Jake Crum, who's a tool, 17th. Katie Hedinger was 18th. Deke McCaskill, 20th. And that's the people that I know in that race. So it was a great battle. If you go on the they have it on YouTube. They have the clips of the last few laps of the race there. So you definitely would be entertained if you go and watch that. MotoGP and Moto2, the last 2 rounds, essentially, I mean, in terms of what took place in the result, yeah. So why is it showing? Oh, that's what it is. Okay, so that's for 2024. All right. At 2023, that's not what I want. In the Grand Prix of Qatar, Fabio Di Gianantonio was the winner at Qatar over Pecco Bagnaia and Luca Marini. Maverick Vinales and Brad Binder, Alex Marquez, Quartararo, Bastianini, Jack Miller, and Jorge Martin rounded out the top 10. Huge gain in points there. 14-point gain by Pecco Bagnaia there at Qatar. In Moto2, Felipe Aldeguer over Gonzalez, Canet, Iagura, Jake Dixon, and Celestino Vietti, Chantra, Costa, Lopez, Arbolino. Jake Roberts was 11th. Not classified. Sean Dylan Kelly only made it 4 laps in the race there. So we'll move to Valencia for Moto2. Aldeguer over Aaron Canet, Alonso Lopez, Manny Ramirez, Chantra, Dixon, Lowe's, Joe Roberts, Dennis Foggia, and Albert Arenas. Pedro Acosta in his last ride in Moto2 finished 12th. And then trying to go through here, Sean Dylan Kelly was the last classified finisher, 13 and a half seconds behind the next person that was on the racetrack. So pretty bad. Get into the standings for MotoGP. The championship, as I mentioned earlier, Pecco Bagnaia repeats as world champion. 39 points over Jorge Martin. Marco Bezzecchi third. Brad Binder fourth. Johan Zarco fifth. Alicia Spargaro, Vinales out Aprilia teammates 6th and 7th, and Luca Marini was 8th. Alex Marquez and Fabio Quartararo rounded out the top 10. And then in I don't know what that is. Results and standings. In Moto2, Pedro Acosta, as mentioned, was a champion over Tony Arbolino, Aldeguer, Dixon, Canet, Chantra, Lopez, Gonzalez, Segura, and Vietti. Joe Roberts finished 13th in points, 93 and a half. He'll be moving over to the the American racing team with sponsorship from OnlyFans. Sean Dillon Kelly ended the season with 1 point. Ramirez ran for American Racing and finished 16th in points. Let's see. So Rally Japan was Toyota dominated at home. You had Cali Rovampera run his last World Championship full season. He's run, so plans to divide Ogier and Rovampera's drives. The results and standings from Rally Japan saw Alfred Evans get the victory over Sebastian Ogier and Cali Rovampera. So Toyota got the full podium. Lappi for Hyundai, Katsuda for Toyota, Tanak for Ford rounded out the Class 1 cars. Evans won by 1 minute 17 seconds over Ogier, but Ogier also had a minute penalty, so he would have only won by 17.7 seconds in that sense. Rovampera, after winning 2 consecutive world championships, is going to go down to a part-time schedule in 2024, sharing a ride with Sebastian Ogier next year. So that's interesting when you're someone in the prime of your career, very young, going and basically taking a hiatus of sorts. In terms of trying to go and make a difference or go move forward with your career. So it's something that we will see how that all works out for him and how he's preparing for a full season again in 2025. So we'll see how that all works out for those guys. Supercars at Adelaide, battle between 2 guys who we have seen in America this year. Shane Van Gisbergen, who was trying to repeat as Supercars champion, and then you had Brody Kostecki, who led the point standings for a good amount of the season, and in the end, Brody Kostecki gets the championship for Coca-Cola Erebus Racing, and even on the Supercars website, he's photographed with Richard Childress, who's going to run them in limited races next year, and then and looking at even running him on an oval. So that'll be something to see for the now Supercars champion. Brody Kostecki battles SVG, holds him off for the championship there. So the season results, will get into the final race here. It took until the end of the year for Ford to finally make a presence felt. Cam Waters and Matthew Payne end up winning the 2 races at Adelaide. So one for Tickford, one for Grove Racing. That's a video, don't need that. And I was looking for, they just give me the results. So that's practice, and no, that's not what I want. Race 20, so we'll get over race 27. Repco Supercars Championship. Cam Waters over David Reynolds, Thomas Randall, and Chaz Mostert. So 4 Fords. Brock Feeney, Brody Kostecki locked up the championship with that 6th place finish. Will Davis and James Courtney. So 6 out of the top 8 were Fords. Andre Heimgardner and Scott Pye rounded out the top 10. Shane Van Gisbergen was eliminated on the first lap with Will Brown, Kostecki's teammate. In the second race, let's wait a minute here, and saw Matthew Payne over Brock Feeney, David Reynolds, Cam Waters, and Chaz Mostert, Andre Heimgardner, Anton De Pasquale, Kostecki, Will Davison, and Thomas Randall. So 7 out of the top 10 were Fords, 4 out of the top 5 there. And if you get out of the top 12, you had 9 out of the top 12 were Fords. So maybe they figured something out. Maybe Adelaide was a good circuit for the Mustang to be determined on that one. SVG in his final weekend in Supercars that for a while, unfortunately, was not able to even really do anything. Had issues the whole weekend, so unfortunate end to the season for him. And but he did win Bathurst, so I think even if you don't win the championship, you won Bathurst, so you can't really complain about the season. If you've won the 1,000, you win the great race. And Scotty McLaughlin was making jokes about it. It's because Brody Kostecki is the first Aussie to win it since it's been Kiwis winning it, with whether to Scotty McLaughlin or Shane Van Gisbergen recently. So Brody Kostecki bringing it back to the Aussie side. He wins by 323 points over Shane Van Gisbergen. Brock Feeney finishes 3rd. Chaz Mostert 4th. Will Brown 5th. Cam Waters, Heimgardner, De Pasquale, Reynolds, and Will Davison rounding out the top 10. So by the end of the year, 5 of the top 10 were Fords. Kostecki ended up with 6 wins and 10 poles. Shane Van Gisbergen 5 wins and 3 poles, same as Brock Feeney, his teammate. Cam Waters won 3 races and 3 poles, so he was the best Ford driver in that sense, but Mostert was the most consistent. Will Brown had 4 wins and 4 poles, so 10 and 14 for Erebus. And Anton De Pasquale had 1 and 1. David Reynolds 1 and 1. Go from there. Yeah, so okay. So that's that for the Supercars. Would set up for main game after dominant Super 2 season. Not to get the guy deserved it thoroughly. I'm trying to go. Yeah, he was with Walkinshaw Andretti United. Their website, you got Ryan Wood will rise to the main game with Walkinshaw Andretti United. And going through his classes, I was confirmed Wood didn't let us. Yeah, so I was driving a Commodore there in the Super 2 series. He'll move up to race the Ford Mustang next year as Chaz Mostert's teammate. So that'll be that. F2 season finale at Abu Dhabi. Formula 2. The Bierman Aaron had Theo Pocher. The results. So the results of the final round. The sprint race winner was Frederick Vesti, and the feature winner was Jack Doohan. In the sprint race, Frederick Vesti over Enzo Fittipaldi, Richard Vachor, Dennis Hauger. That's the guy I was trying to remember for Red Bull. Isaac Hadjar, Doohan, Pocher, Iwasa, Maloney, Bierman round out your top 10. Jack Crawford, 12th. Kushmini, 13th. Yeah, that's that. And then in the feature race was Jack Doohan over Victor Martins, Frederick Vesti, Iwasa, Pocher, Artur Leclerc, Hauger, Hadjar, Miney, and Crawford round out the top 10. Pocher wins the F2 championship by 9 points over Vesti. Doohan was third by 3 points over Iwasa. Martins was fifth. Bierman, Fittipaldi, Hauger, Vachor, and then Zane Maloney rounded out the top 10. Kushmini was 11th. J.N. Daruvula 12th. Jack Crawford 13th. In the standings, Manuel Correa was 19th. Brad Benavides was one of 5 drivers that didn't score points this year. But, I mean, was it Paul Aaron and Colapinto only made one start, and that was at Abu Dhabi. Mason only started the last 4 races. Benavides, Nissany, Nissany ran the whole year and didn't score a point. Benavides lost his ride with 4 rounds to go. He didn't get any points. You go and look at the testing for Formula 2. I'm trying to get the rundown. So yeah, morning, and yeah, so you have some new driver team combinations. Enzo Fittipaldi is running for Van Amersfoort Racing. Jack Crawford and Juan Manuel Correa tested for Dams, but Crawford is going to be racing for them. Zane Maloney moves over to Rodin Carlin. Ritomo Miata, the Japanese Japanese Super Formula champion, moves over to Formula 2. Trying to see. They announced Kushmini as well. He was another one. I'm trying to remember where I saw I think it's probably on racer.com for Formula 2. Lane, Ocon, Grandstand, Brent Cruz. Yeah. Oh, wow. She's back. Burton and Ocon for Formula 2 app Crew Pro. They didn't put it up there. So it's probably here. And so Miata's going for Carlin. Iwasa, as I mentioned, will be moving to Super Formula. Crawford, after losing the Red Bull support, is going over to Dams. Gabriel Bortoletto and Kushmini will be teammates at Virtuosi in F2 next year. So those are the updates with that. Other news was from a couple weeks ago. Leah Block, the daughter of the late Ken Block, has plied her trade in rallying, but she's going to go and get into circuit racing and open wheel racing, driving in the F1 Academy with support from Williams, and will be racing for the ART team as well. So that'll be something to look at. Cadillac registered as an engine power unit manufacturer in F1 starting in 2028. The aim, of course, is to do it with Andretti Global. So will that happen? I'm not sure. Something that we are hoping will come off, and it'll expedite the process if they would actually allow them in. But it's Formula One; they always have to be difficult. Other news, got other testing going on. MotoGP, you had WEC talking about that. More or less the whole entire grid for Formula One is made already. Sans the one seat at Williams. I mentioned the thing with McLaren and Monster Energy. We'll find out the names and the team identities and whatever here in the next few days in Formula One. So Jack Miller's son is going to move up to Indy next. Dr. Jack Miller owns the team with Patriots and Colts legend and one of the greatest kickers of all time, Adam Vinatieri. So that's interesting. I haven't heard Vinatieri's name in a bit. So he's in motorsports. That was one of his things that he does in business with Jack Miller. You have WEC. They're on 37 cars. They announced the full grid for next year. By 2025, they want to expand to 40 cars. And this is based on, then the number that they determine is based on the tracks that have the least amount of grids or garage spaces, one of them being Coda. So we'll see. And they mentioned the sharing of pits or some of these teams that have two cars sharing a pit, more like Formula One, to save space. So there's that. Yeah, I think that is it for other news. So, Josh, I'll go to you first. What were you thankful for? We coming off of Thanksgiving, we're in the holiday spirit. Christmas is just under a month away. It's time to be aware of things to be thankful for. So what were you thankful for from this motorsports year?
There's a lot of things to be thankful for. Thankful, for a lot of the good racing we saw this year. Definitely thankful, in Cup at least, and NASCAR wasn't as, toxic as it was in 2022, with a lot of the drama that we saw because of the new car and the injuries that happened from that. So definitely thankful for that. Thankful for, Dale Jr. having a good year, and in the limited appearances that he ran in late models and Xfinity, and seeing him lead 46 laps at Bristol, back in September. So thankful for that. But I think from personal perspective, definitely thankful I was able to attend all the races that I attended this year, obviously, and the Rolex 24. I was able to bring one of my friends there that never been to a racing event, and we were able to enjoy that, and then bringing some of my longtime friends that had never been to a race as well to the Coke 0400 in Daytona. And then, obviously we got to meet up as well that day, and then linked up with Joe. And then, on the next, the Homestead Miami Speedway, being able to see Dale Jr. there race, and then, linking up with Joe there. So, being able to see all that events, experience that new experiences with friends, and, being able to, see friends that I've seen before with Joe and all that stuff. And, being able to, see you for a bit at Waffle House, and that was pretty cool as well. So thankful for that. And then I think also, I've talked about go-karting a lot this year, and, everything. So, definitely think I'm thankful for that, for, the friends that got me to come out to the track more this year, and have a more concerted effort in doing that. So being able to hone my craft, I guess, this year, and that, and being able to do iRacing and stuff, and kind of connect what I do in iRacing to be able to kind of connect that racecraft that I've developed over the years into go-karting, and take it out onto paved track, and all that leading into what I did back in July with the kind of the pro go-karting experience that I did over in Bushnell. So I think the investment, I guess, that I've made in, obviously in motorsports this year, I think definitely compared to previous years, obviously I've gone to races, and we've been doing this for a while, iRacing and all that stuff. So definitely thankful for that. But I think being able to do more on the track and do my own racing sort of, and attend more events, and share that with other people, definitely thankful for being able to do that. So I think personally, yeah, that's what I'm thankful for, just from what I did myself.
Yeah, those are all good ones. Us being able to finally meet up and hang out for breakfast in the summer there, while I was with my family for preparing for the cruise there, was cool. And just shooting a breeze, talking racing and other in sports was definitely great. Trying to coordinate with Joe. Hopefully next year that'll happen. Whether it's we're down there in Florida, or if it is up here, we'll see what happens with that. Grateful for racing in general, because I was able to finally get back to the racetrack, go to Pocono, and take 3 people who had never been before, and make a whole day of it, essentially. And we had fun, and I was able to go and teach my cousin and one of my close friends, and my cousin's boyfriend, about NASCAR and all the different things that are going on. And it reminded me how much I love racing, how much I love Pocono. I hadn't been there in so many years, so it was a real blast. I didn't really have the time to do the diecast hunting that I probably wanted to, but there was still plenty of merch there, and was able to get a cool Dale Earnhardt car that weekend from the 79 year or 80, whatever. Other things grateful for, I would say grateful to Smoke for running a great drag racing team, and to him for competing in his first full year in Top Alcohol Dragster and finishing second in points, giving Matt Hagan the equipment to go and get the championship in funny car, become a 4-time world champion in funny car, while Leah, his wife, goes and finishes third. It's cool to see Doug Coletta finally get the elusive championship. Now he needs Indy to make his career. As we're getting to the replay, we have the replay of the 2009 Talladega race and the major finish here for Roid Rage and Bubba Booey. Brad Keselowski, he makes the move, goes to the inside, and Carl Edwards is flying, and
Brad Keselowski has won this race.
Yeah, that was, and talk about a diecast that is so expensive. The first win car for Brad Keselowski, driving for James Finch. It's one of the most rare and expensive pieces. Basically, when I was still like a full-on fan of Brad, the only cars I didn't have were some of those Dodges he had from 2010 and on. And then 2009 with that first win car and his Xfinity stuff that he had driving for Junior with the Navy and all the other sponsors he had there. Junebug finishing second in that race, enduring Brad because that was his
protege.
Yeah, protege and employee there. It was a big deal back then. We didn't know what Brad Keselowski would be after that day, but we had kind of started to see what kind of presence he had because he had ruffled feathers with all them Toyota guys, Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. But little did we know that a few years later, just a year later, you would be the Xfinity Series champion for Penske and start a long relationship with Penske Racing. And then a couple years after that, become NASCAR Cup Series champion. I think grateful, before we move forward, I think I'm just grateful for this, along with the show. With the show and along with the things that have come during this year and things that I've been able to fix and things that are going to be able to become better. I think those are generally what I'm grateful for, because we're here, we're able to do this show, we're almost at 200 episodes. I think it's crazy to think when we started this that would be we'd be at close to 200 episodes, and so we'll be there soon. So we'll definitely talk about that and get into that here in the next few weeks. Josh, I'll open the floor for all things going on in the sim segment.
Yeah, first of all, I'll say, definitely say, thankful for, being able to do this, and, also thankful to, all my friends that, I've told about this and, who have either taken interest in this or because of this got interested in racing, and everything. So, thankful for, being able to, at least share this and, tell people about, and all my friends that have listened to it. Definitely got a couple friends back in Jacksonville that have definitely taken interest in it. So glad to have shared it, and at least they also know me as a iRacing Indy 500 champion. So it's always funny to hear that. So thankful for that. But speaking of iRacing, in iRacing, this week, we're kind of in that. I think, we're kind of just waiting on 2024 Season 1 to come out now that all the updates are out here. Still waiting on the rain update whenever that comes. The Gen 4 Cup at Homestead Miami, I think I might do that one. Ran 87s last night on iRacing at Pocono, which had a little bit of time yesterday because had to stay home yesterday and do some car work. And I had a little bit of time since I didn't go to work yesterday to put in time on iRacing, and ran top 3 at Pocono. So in the 87 car, and had a big save that I might have to clip because I was in the turn 3 and nearly lost it, and definitely was drifting through a bit of that corner, and didn't really hit me until I saw the replay, and it was like, oh wow, I really drifted through that corner. And excuse me, but I thought I was about to spin out while playing, but then it looked like got loose through the corner. Is definitely dirt tracking it for a little bit there, so I might have to clip that and put that on social or YouTube or something, so y'all can see that maybe. So I might do that this week. We'll see. But yeah, 87's at Pocono. The Winter iRacing Series at Martinsville for the 87, so might do that. IndyCar at iRacing Super Speedway, which is interesting. The NASCAR Xfinity at Auto Club, always rest in peace to Auto Club Speedway, but I guess it will always, at least until they turn it into a short track, and then iRacing has to go and scan the short track. Hopefully they keep the oval for old time's sake, the big oval, but Xfinity there that week, one of my favorite tracks. As I said, NASCAR at 2009 Pocono, I should say, not current Pocono, but 2009 Pocono with the worn out pavement and the original grip strip over in turn 3 at Pocono. So there's that. Road course racing side. Let's see here. GT4, production car sim lab challenge at Oran Park. The Formula 4 D class at VIR, Virginia International Raceway. Road America and the Spec Racer Ford Challenge. Global MX5 Cup at Okayama Circuit. Rookie Formula Fords at Summit Point Raceway as well. Let's see. Dallara IR01. So the interesting here, the IR01 class, which is like, it's basically like a cross between a kart, late 90s kart performance with modern Formula 1 aerodynamics and horsepower. And that's at Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the oval, so interesting there. Might have to take a look at that. So that's like almost like running 1996 speed with modern aerodynamics, so that might be interesting there. And looking at other stuff, the IndyCar is at the Silverstone Grand Prix, so that might be interesting to run there if I can do it. So yeah, definitely a lot of choices here. Still the iRacing Black Friday sale still going on through November 30th, so I haven't gotten that. Go ahead and get on that. Save 50% if you're a new member to iRacing, 25% if you're a returning member on there for 1 year or 2 year deals there. So definitely get in that if you want to get into iRacing. Got one of my friends getting into iRacing now, so I'm trying to coach them up. I've been trying to coach up some of my friends that got into go-karting this year, so we'll see how that goes, and hopefully get on there and run some races there with them. So we'll see. But yeah, definitely glad to have done sim racing this year. Hopefully we'll have the Indy 500, so maybe we can add more Indy 500 titles, or just the ability to run that race, of course. Let's see. Yeah, when maybe next year, probably try to do more road course racing, official races like the Rolex 24 and other stuff. So still got to look up the dates for that and see if I can plan that. And as long as I have anything, maybe I'll try to enter the Rolex 24, but I have to contact some people because I'm definitely not running that on my own for 24 hours. That'd be insane. I can't do that. So definitely look for streams if I stream on Twitch TV /iRacing or /USailor2. Go on there and stream. That's where I'll have streams on there. Of course, follow my Twitter, JP Huffine, on there. I'm going to call it Twitter, despite it being X. That's how I know it as, and it's probably one of the worst rebrands of all time. So, and I actually like Elon Musk, so that able to at least criticize him there. So, go on X or Twitter at JB Huffine, see all my takes on the sport, of course, and what I'm interested in, of course. The Jacksonville Jaguars, as I've talked about, getting active on there, talking about them. The Florida Gators, hope they fire Billy Napier because he stinks. And of course, follow our YouTube page at Gripstrip Podcast, where we have all our podcasts up until this point. So we'll have this one uploaded shortly or afterwards or soon afterwards, and go on there, like and subscribe to our page. So yeah, of course, I'll turn it over to you, and of course, glad to be on for another week, and of course, thankful for being able to be on the show.
Absolutely, man. We're able to have Thanksgiving with our families, and we're able to, even though it was a couple days later, go and do the show as usual this week, and we'll continue to do it, get to 200 before the end of 2023. You can find me at PGMatthew28 on Twitter. Find us at GripStripPod on Twitter. Basically, if you listen to podcasts, you can find anywhere, as long, well, if you listen to this podcast, of course, you can find this show basically anywhere the podcasts are distributed, whether it's Apple, Amazon, Podbean, which is our host site. And then you have my blog site, or the philipgmatthew28.podbean.com, and also philipgmatthew.com, which is my WordPress. It's also a place where the show is distributed. So those are all places you can find the Grip Strip podcast. I'm also philipgmatthew28 on Insta. So with that, we will be back next week for episode 198 of the Grip Strip podcast. It will be a season review for both Xfinity and trucks. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about NFL Week 13.
Yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars live cast, since they're on Monday Night Football.
Oh yeah, that's true too. So that'll be interesting with Jacksonville versus Cincy, with Jake Browning at quarterback for them. And we'll see if we can get Joe back on for that. And then we'll give you the news. Niners and Philly will play as well. And then we'll give you the news of the week, and the usual other segments that you're so used to here on the Gripstrip podcast. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Thanks for listening to Gripstrip podcast, and we will see you next time.